Morning, everybody. It's nice to speak with you here. Forward deployed engineering is a very interesting concept, especially when you look at what's going on right at the moment. So I'm sure that James gave you a fine introduction. Just a quick commercial to say that much of the material that's in this presentation is coming from two new books that should be out hopefully later this year on these topics. You can see them on the screen here. Now, to start off with, it's kind of an interesting time for us here in the world. I say that without any reference to anything in particular, but at least at the moment, we're seeing that virtually every chief executive officer in the entire world is screaming that they need to invest in data and AI. That is a top organizational priority. In fact, the numbers are literally astounding. I can't remember the last time 99% of us agreed on anything. And to have 99% of us agreeing that AI and data is important is a wonderful thing for us. But the reality check is equally problematic. When you look at how these things, whoops, sorry, I'll go back a lot. These things haven't delivered because 95% of these projects have been very problematic in terms of what they deliver. And it's embarrassing to come up and say, the pilot didn't work. So the question comes up, how do we fix something like this? And this is, of course, a joke, but nevertheless, the way it has tended to work most of the time is that people look for a hero. So this is a picture of me riding my horse, vastly enhanced with AI, as you can hear from James laughing there.
Superhero.
Yeah, exactly. I don't happen to believe in unicorns, however. And I'm perfectly happy to admit that when the little star in the upper right-hand corner of the slides is shining and like it's glimmering, I've been using AI to prepare these things, and that's entirely appropriate in today's environment. But again, the unicorns, unfortunately, are not. And so that is a challenge here. One of the things that I do is that I'm an academic researcher. And one of the pieces of research that I've been following for more than a decade has been conducted by a fellow named Randy Bean. You can see the link right down here at the bottom, Randy Bean Data. And I'm certain that when James distributes the slide to you, the link is actually live, so you can just click on it. But one of his
Randy
most
Bean
important findings that he's had here
I'm just saying, who is Randy Bean?
Sure, absolutely. Great guy. Randy asked the same question to literally thousands of people who were working in data. And the question was very simply, are your primary source of your problems technology-based, or are they people and process-based? And this was the results in 2018. You can see it was a very nice 80-20 split. In 2019, the results were similar as they were in 2021, 2022, 2023. You see what's happening here. There's quite a very similar pattern, 2025 all the way to 2026. The nice thing about 2026 was this was the greatest difference between the two of these that he had seen up to this point. A wonderful set of research that should drive home the point quite clearly that 80% of the data challenges that are out there are people and process based. 80% of them then are candidates to be assisted by data governance and related types of efforts. In fact, if you think about it, the help desk is typically not very helpful to be able to do this kind of a address. It just doesn't work out into their ticketing fashion in there. And that people represent then the greatest impediment to AI success. It's really quite clear at this point we're not getting that aspect right. It's been referred to as the last mile. Now, from a history perspective, it sort of starts out with an insight that somebody at Palantir claims to have had. And I will say that may be true for the current incarnation, but that's kind of like patenting air or discovering that the world is round last year. Certainly the cycle of collecting sales requirements is going to be more bureaucratic and difficult to do, whereas the engineers developing these things are going to be different. And so it's a concept in terms of the way in which we do gather these things and that they aren't translated way too many times. So the mantra from Palantir was that somebody must go directly to the customer site, explore together, and use it while making changes. And this was a very good revelation that one of their executives had. And it's quite a good revelation because as you further you get away from there, the more translation occurs. It's a game that's called telephone in English, although it does have a derivation to Chinese whispers, although I'm told that's not a very nice thing to say for some reason. I don't quite understand here. But the concept of forward deployed engineering originating as a proprietary operational technology is a statement that I would have some disagreement with. I present partially as evidence a Dilbert. Some of you who've seen American culture will understand that he was a big product of the cube culture, the cubicle culture, and that it reads very carefully, Wally, we don't have time to gather the requirements ahead of time. The pointy-haired boss says that to Wally, who's the engineer who doesn't work most of the time. The pointy-haired boss continues in the second frame. I want you to start designing the product anyway. Otherwise, it will feel like we aren't accomplishing anything. He's pointing his finger and saying, do this. And Wally goes back to his desk and opens the newspaper back when we had newspapers. So you can see this is dated from 1997. Of all my projects, Wally says, I like the doomed ones the best. This is always the case, that if you didn't understand the problem, it was very difficult to solve for it. And the best way to understand the problem, well, I'll illustrate from another historical analogy. This was in 1987. So Apple at HyperCard before Steve Jobs returned, and this was one of my first consulting engagements. It was amazing. HyperCard was among the first successful hypermedia systems. So it was something that predated the World Wide Web, but it had most of the attributes of it, including links and connections and multimedia and things like this. The package as a software item had been given the ready to ship signal by the engineering team at Apple. Apple was done with it. They thought it was great, ready to go. The next step in the workflow was the specifications from the test team. And the test team said, where are the specifications for this? Now, most of you probably have never interacted with HyperCard, but it was an interesting product. It was, again, this multimedia and sort of distributed concept. It had a combination of features of database with a word processor, with a graphics processor, and a programming environment. And most people would go, why do you want something like that? Well, there was a group of us that were quite enamored with the technology and found it was really useful. I actually still have files from those days that were so useful that I kept them. But here was the interesting piece. We had to go and find out. I was employed by the test team at the time, and they were starved for ideas to try and get these requirements. The engineers were being haughty, is the word, very just thinking they didn't need to participate. So we kind of tricked them. We sent in a test team with video cameras and we interviewed the engineering team. And then we watched those interviews and derived the requirements and sent them back to the team for verification. And this simply to us reinforced the point that you have to spend, particularly in newish environments, much time living with the users. And these are the basic, is the embodiment of what they're articulating in FDE correctly. To prevent disasters is a good saying among them. Engineers must undergo a profound and often uncomfortable mental transformation. So it sounds very insidious, but the tenets are quite good. The transformation has to occur instead of I created this many lines of code to I created this much value in the organization to do this. And so it is quite a transformation. They're really shifting to it. There's again a saying in this: you must feel the direct personal weight of a customer depending on your work. Now that is quite a weight on somebody's shoulder, but it does very much shift the perspective. The second tenet then is becoming a user before becoming a builder. which in my mind makes a lot of sense. Again, you look at it and understanding how the users do this work is quite useful to you as a designer. James, you want to break in?
No, you're not breaking. You're
Okay.
good.
The third one is trying to say that while oftentimes we in the academic communities do end up with large, grandiose type schemes, there's a reality that sets in that says we just need a minimum viable product, and that's not always engineered correctly.
MVP, right? The term.
MVP, that is correct.
Yeah,
and then finally, looking at this idea of not understanding the ambiguity in there. And it's sorry, I went a slide too fast there. But the ambiguity is just that some things are going to be not certain, and that you have to architect and move forward with them. Anybody that's ever worked in a military type concept or just a planning type concept knows how unstable this is. So, I'll give you an example of how popular all of this is. Salesforce is planning to recruit 1,000 FTEs. They are just looking at explosive demand here. So you can see 8 times growth of probably measured across LinkedIn, if I recall. And James, thanks to your teams for doing such a great job of some of the backup on this. So let's just kind of summarize. I'm not going to read you everything on the chart. It's actually kind of a nice one. You can take it home. But 99% of the project companies prioritize AI. 95% of the pilots fail. There's got to be something we can do better than that. And so the FDE model, again, advocates some practices that I think are excellent in terms of this, but are not, quite frankly, new to the FDE world, other than perhaps this is the first time the data science community has understood them. So another way to look at that same picture, but the basic of the two pictures is that the old system is less efficient in many types of applications of trying to develop one system that would be used by everybody, and that the system that has more time and attention devoted to it, particularly in the requirements end, I think everybody has agreed since the computers were invented, generally results in a better system from this. And this is the main focus of it. The idea is, again, understanding incomplete information and constant ambiguity. It's just the opposite of what you'd like to have on the other side in order to do this. And this next set of slides are actual slides from a software company, a company that employs 3,500 software engineers. And these are planning slides from about a year and a half ago. Now, the fun part is I'm going to have lunch with Jamie in the next couple of weeks and look forward to hearing an update on this because he said he had one for me. But you can see, at least from this perspective, that a lot of these jobs in phase one are going to accrete into smaller job categories. So that means the people who are occupying those jobs are going to have to become, I'll just say it, more unicorn-like. And that's phase one. Here is phase two of the same approach. What they anticipated, they want to have these senior developers. These senior developers are, I contend, the exact same thing as these forward deployed engineers that people want to have on this. Again, I'm looking forward to an update on this because I don't think, I think the bottleneck is going to be recruiting enough unicorns to work for these engagements. Let me give us organization. And they're looking for people, employees, in what are called mid-market cities. These are not your Beijings and Guangzhous. These are the smaller towns. So a salary of the size $191,000 to $277,000 is a very large amount. In other words, that is the salary you would want to pay to attract a unicorn to this. And you can see they're looking for these engagement posted. So these are the actual Boeing Computer Company Services job requirements here. So the first one is to own and maintain AI, data, automation, and analytics portfolios.
So the data for data and AI, yeah.
Second one
Yes.
is to intake, qualify, and prioritize these various initiatives. So quite a key role in leadership and architecture. The third one is a translate function, and that's just simply a lot of different translation needs to occur at this one individual, and that's going to become very key, you'll see in just a few minutes. But this translate function, if I could get people who just translated better, that would be wonderful. I'm sorry, James, I'll go back and stop at the translate. Thank you, James. Next one, manage complex cross-functional program plans, schedules, risks, dependencies, and budgets. I'll try to go a little faster. Facilitate discovery workshops to define problems, quantify value, scope solutions. I mean, they're looking for a unicorn here. Prepare and present updates, reviews, communications.
Yeah.
They're responsible for the adoption and reuse of analytics and AI solutions to measure the usage, to value the realization.
看看这个最终的业务价值到底在哪，所以这一点非常的关键。
Communicate the portfolio health and success stories to the leadership.
Yeah, 这个
collaborate with different areas around the business, developing functional data, analytics, AI, automation roadmaps.
Oh, this is way too much.
Process mapping. This is way too much. You're exactly right, James. Lead process mapping. I mean, they're paying the right amount of money for this expertise in a mid-market venue that gets to work half the time from your home. So, you know, if I was younger, I would be very attracted to this type of a job. But you can see here, this is a tremendous amount. And recall, I made the comment a minute ago, I'd be really happy if they just could do this well. Most of us would be very thankful to have staff that were super. And it's not that they're not good at it, but it is a hard thing to be good at. And so this is, again, an excellent description of what an FDE could do for Boeing in order to do this, very much like the previous one was for the other group. So
for Salesforce.
Sorry, go ahead, James.
Yeah, I said it for Salesforce. It's the same. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. So now we start. Go ahead. Okay. Now we ask the question: what makes an FDE unique? And the real first thing is a power trio. They're a full stack hacker. So they understand how to connect with legacy databases, adopt to physically isolated environments, whatever it is they need to do, they can get in and do it from a technical perspective. Then they need to be a business consultant and understand how to talk to people in English. I got a job once, James, because I sat on a table cross-legged.
Yeah, go ahead.
So one description of this individual is that it's this unique combination of three different skill sets. Here's another wonderful combination of it. First one says they've got product judgment. This is an empathetic sort of description of it. They understand what the product and its use means to people. Some products we use and there's not importance to them. Some products we use, they're relatively more important to us. And that brings in the dimension of customer empathy that's embedded within the entire and when they say field, they don't mean a field on a database. They mean a field of study, a field of practice around that. And the third dimension is this technical depth that you heard about as well, that you're able to sling the code that needs to do this. But these are all, again, unique sort of traits. So here's, a comparison of the primary goal, which in an FDE context is to direct the customer outcome and platform adoption, make sure that it works. Whereas a solutions architect or traditional software engineer might have very different perspectives.
Okay, Peter.
A focus on a code ownership was going to be looking at integration of production components, edge cases, and data pipelines that need to be architected. From a solution architect, very different focus. And again, you can see the traditional engineer also a different focus.
Yeah, we're good, Peter. Yeah.
Third one is the key metric. Time to value. How long does it take before we can start paying off? Nobody can afford a 3-year payback in today's environment. So, different from a deal close rate or a feature velocity sort of measure.
Yeah.
Once again, let me reiterate, I fully support the characteristics, the goals, the code ownership, the key metric of the fully deployed engineering column as best practices. It's just not unique to them. So again, a final sort of comparison here in terms of the way things come about. We'll look at core positioning here. So here's the FDE. You can see the things going down. I'll just read them briefly or try to summarize them briefly, James, and let you translate for us.
Okay.
But they're on site with the customer and they're feeling the pressure to implement is the core positioning there, that there's full-time support. There's none of this divided attention or the idiots right out of college or any other scenarios that come in there, and that they've got really good communication capabilities that they're able to articulate and gosh, be on the evening news if you need to in there, so that the business results get delivered quickly. The next comparison is against a traditional outsourcing model. And you can see there the core positioning is focusing on the code, on remote development at a cheaper price point. In there, it's purely focused on technical developing and delivering modules that are capable of being phased or delivered in sequence. Thanks, James. Again, just two more here. One is a pre-sales engineer, which is the way, again, the vendor software is sold. And there's some types of understanding of the data model from that perspective. There's very little, the sales model has to be with the money in the sales, not in the support for it. And that there's demonstration of the capabilities. You'll hear the phrase, it always works on PowerPoint. And finally, delivering documents that are focused in there, whatever they happen to be. Okay, one last one. Here we go. The traditional data scientist. Again, they're focused on model development. They're probably in a laboratory or a company R&D type function. Their allegiance is onto the algorithm and to making the model perform better and deliver metrics on the model without necessarily tying those metrics to business value. Thank you, James. Again, just a very big comparison, but you can see there are significant differences in there. Let's take a look at strategy for just a quick second, because that is one of the goals of this process. And I'm going to describe this as a method that you should use to do implementation. You can see already it's a 4-quadrant implementation diagram, of which I have revealed the first quadrant. But of course, the quadrant is useless without the dimensions. So there are only 2 goals of strategy. 1, to improve operations. 2, to innovate. Everything else is a variant of the 2. This is a very good process to follow. Most organizations don't have a good strategy for approaching this. You all are interested in this because you're leading thinkers in your environments, but the rest of the world has not discovered these concepts yet. And so you have the first entry mover advantage. But not having a strategy at all, as you know, is a bad idea. If we're looking to more improve operations, the Walmart Corporation comes to mind, perhaps. They're held out as a model of organizations that increase the effectiveness and efficiency of their operations. If we go the other direction, this quadrant up here, quadrant 3, we'll put Apple Computer up there and talk about a company that, in theory, creates strategic opportunities. Don't get me wrong, I'm not mad at Apple. I have some of their stock, full disclosure, but they basically sit back and watch other people make mistakes and then take the best of what's left over. It's still obviously a quite good business for them. And the last quadrant is to try and do both Q2 and Q3 at the same time, which is a really bad idea. So the question comes up, what is an organization to do? And the recommendation is very much to start in the second quarter and to use this to increase operational efficiencies and effectiveness. And I'll show you very specifically why that is the best starting place in just a minute. But doing so, you can generate piles of cash on here, or electronic cash if that's how you decide to do it. And you can use that cash to fund these strategic opportunities that are up in the third quadrant. James, so what are the things that can be done with this approach? And I'm going to show you a phased growth model that's basically the same thing as that other chart, but perhaps in a little bit easier way to describe it. The first step is to look at your step values of just simply obtaining business value by successfully supplementing or augmenting an existing work stream in your organization. It's not a big requirement, and yet 95% of all organizations have failed so far to do anything successfully in this area. The second step is to recognize those savings, make certain that people understand they are the results of your analysis efforts and that you have successfully improved an existing practice. There is money in those things. The third step is then to reinvest in transformative type activities and to use those to actually transform the enterprise.
Okay, Peter.
I would be it would be bad of me not to put a feedback loop on it.
然后就不断的重复这个 loop。
We say in our environment, lather, rinse, and repeat is the shampoo stuff.
Yeah.
So we're going to change directions here slightly, and I'm going to talk about this augmentation process because it's very important to get the correct picture in mind. This is a hero of mine when I was doing my doctoral work in the early 1980s, mid 1980s, excuse me. Vannevar Bush was President Roosevelt's science advisor during World War II, and he had some very specific thoughts on how to capture and augment what we now call knowledge workers. This was his Memex, and you can see here it has a, oops, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back, there we go. First of all, he published a wonderful article that was truly inspirational around the world and still inspires people today, as it did me in the mid-1980s. As we may think, you can find a copy by Googling it yourself. It's easy to get a copy of this. It's a wonderful article about how people do this. And notice that this brings us to step one of augmenting and valuing the value of that augmentation. His approach to it was without a value approach, but that you could use this type of a machine to link all sorts of information. And if you look on the internet, you'll find this concept of a Memex, a memory extender, out there. There's some simulations and things like that. It's a wonderful, inspiring concept. There's, like I said, millions around the world have followed in his footsteps. Well, this same augmentation value goes into the concept of the MIT report that's so famous, reporting that the 95% of these projects not succeeding. With a cursory understanding, first of all, I did read the report. It's available. You can get a copy of it. But they're focusing these things on the wrong level of abstraction. So, for example, here in this case, the data science community has said, if you're a data scientist, that's good enough. Well, we know that that takes people typically 3 years to become useful to the organization. But if you are specifically trained as a marine data scientist, or a chemical data scientist, or an economic data scientist, you can be productive to the organization much faster. I'm sure I went too long, James. Sorry.
No, it's okay because the translation did a good job so far on the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Keep going then. All right. Well,
yeah, keep going.
Let's take a look at what's wrong. Why are all these things fading? And then, given the guidance up to this point, you need to use tools that you acquire rather than build to focus narrowly on focusing back office workflows. If you don't get good at that, you'll never get good at anything else. Your agents are going to be nonsense. Again, it makes absolutely no sense. Communicate, of course, for it to work with a common vocabulary. Using data that is fit for purpose with an existing infrastructure, ensuring that the solution will enhance the existing performance, not in fact degrade it. That you've got to have explainable auditability and a verified CRUD matrix encompassing the challenge space that you're working at. And for it to work at scale, you've got to work on fixing a number of existing workflows so that they can all work at the scale that you're attempting to, so that it will complement your existing architecture and focus on specific literacies. Now, I've introduced a term that you might not be familiar with, a CRUD matrix. Thank you, James.
Yeah.
So let's talk a bit more about this CRUD matrix that James was describing. Again, we're still in the concept of augmenting and valuing these theses. But in order to get to a CRUD matrix, you have to do several things prior to getting to the CRUD matrix. Let me explain them briefly. You need a context model that defines the size and scope of the problem. One of the biggest challenges with these analytics exercises is that they are improperly specified, and so it's hard to determine whether something is in scope or out of scope. So
Okay,
this
Peter.
context model tells you what's in scope and what's out of scope, and that's a very helpful device for doing any type of work along those sides. Two parallel developments at the same time come from the context model. The first is a process architecture that will consist of some series of process models that will be relevant to the solution that you're trying to develop.
Yeah, okay, the translation is good, Peter.
Perfect. Excellent. All right. The second will be your data architecture. Of course, you know you need to understand your data to do this. The data architecture is going to consist of data models that represent at least the scope of the problem solution. And when you put the two of these things together, the data architecture and the process model together, you get the CRUD matrix that James was describing there, which tells you specifically that these processes create these specific data items, and exchanging data items with processes is part of the AI automation. In fact, it's dependent on these kinds of things. So remember again that all of these things we have to keep in mind are now going to start to help us recognize the savings. Once we understand these things at a much more in-depth understanding, we get this insight that these explicit business rules are one of the core tasks of forward developed engineering. And if you don't have this basis for them, the chances of your project succeeding are absolutely zero. The challenge for us has been that this information is stored implicitly in the heads of the subject matter experts that we're working with. And having them on the projects allows us to do this, but not to keep this documentation in the long term. So you can see a CRUD matrix has a number of different answers that you can bring to it. Sorry, James, I went too fast.
Okay, Peter.
Thank you, James. Again, just a bit more on the process models, but they can describe which entities can be created by specific users or specific processes, which entities can be viewed or read, which fields can be modified, which can be deleted, et cetera, et cetera. There's a wealth of information. As I said before, this starts to extend not just step one, but now to step two, where we're recognizing the savings from these things. You may think to yourselves, oh, doing a query optimization on a particular set of activities may not be useful, but when you recognize that that activity now runs faster 1 billion times a day, there's some significant dollars that can be accredited towards exactly that type of an improvement.
Yeah, Peter is good. Translation is good.
So we've got to think of these things like building a cross-sea bridge. Without a chief engineer to draw those construction plans, coordinate all the parties, the bridge will definitely not be, much less repaired, in this case built. So you've got a bridge designer, which is equivalent roughly to our algorithm engineer, the material supplier, the data engineer, and again, the troika, the business side of these things, all of these replaced with a single chief engineer that can do coordination work, all of them. And I say replaced in the sense that they're really augmented to the team, but they're making all three of these individuals more productive, and that is so much more valuable. We now start to get to the point where we have some money to reinvest and transform, and understanding things at this level gives us a much better ability to look now beyond the standard workflow solutions that we talked about in phase one, to look at the larger solutions that are possible, the business or enterprise transformative type of activities. One last piece on this, the failure of on all of these activities when you do this is generally to a lack of a unified designer of business data model. So this is very, very critical to make sure that we have all of these things in place in order to be successful with them.
所以他是想的是 cross sea Chesapeake Bay
Cross.
Bridge 啊，Peter. Are you talking about go to Virginia Beach? You have to go through all those. I love
Well,
driving on that bridge though.
it is a 17. So to get some immediate consequences on this, let's try to get three things together: understand the business, be a good communicator, and be able to implement lots, fix lots of things. Right? Well, that again is pretty unicornish, but procurement activities, types of drive transformations, and even people selection can be very much influenced in a different direction if you adopt this mindset. Thank you, James. Again, we'll continue on with our idea of reinvesting this in transformative types of activities. These are phase 3 activities. And one of the things you'll notice is that speed and insight become the new moats, being strategic, competitive, sustainable, strategic, competitive advantages. I forgot that keyword, sustainable, in there. But understanding these things allows people to dive and to create different types of business value that are then useful to a large different class of customers rather than just a specific set of customers. Thank you. And you gave me time to correct my slides too. I don't know if you caught that or not.
It's still good. It's still good.
It's still good, right? So just take some new modes. Here's the idea that most small companies are not going to be able to run AI on their own, even if they can run the services locally. So running AI as a service could be a very valuable consequence around this. Doing data cleansing prior to this is probably going to be a tremendous thing. If you've seen, my last book was on data marketplaces, and you may see some very similar types of activity here where these things are becoming incredibly popular. And then finally, looking at AI native process re-engineering is a tremendous opportunity for organizations that are willing to invest in things. One of the things that you will see as a result of these are things called AI integration units. And I asked the chat to make us one, so they came up with some wonderful people doing all sorts of things and making nonsense statements here. But nevertheless, we will probably see the kinds of things that are coming along. Don't forget the feedback loop. It's really important. These idea is that dedicated focus will result in higher and better effectiveness. And yet so many organizations try to put this into a part-time or really nonsensical category. But again, dedicated focus will result in better effectiveness, especially around your feedback loop. Thank you, James. One last comparison chart here, just that some roles may be rethought. We cannot say for sure this is the way things are going to go out. For example, if we look at just the role of chief data officers, you will see that about 1/3 report to a business owner, a chief executive officer, 1/3 report to a chief CIO or a chief CTO, and 1/3 report to some other business function such as a finance officer. Thank you, James. So we have a saying that we keep saying, but Informatica said it first: everybody is ready for AI except your data. This is due to the generalized limitation that we all face. Bad data plus anything awesome will still yield bad results.
Yeah. So your company called it anything awesome. Yeah, 他的意思就是说，你看，不好的。
I believe in this so much that I put garbage in, garbage out on my automobile.
So,
So,
he's
of
young.
course, then he'll be very surprised if I pull him over. I'm an oldie guy, right? So it's not easy to visualize the cost of something else that we haven't talked a lot about, but plays right into what we're describing: visualizing data debt. And it slows things, it decreases quality, increases costs, and presents greater risks. 80% of all organizational data is redundant, obsolete, or trivial. And I'll just give you a big block here on data debt. Don't read this, James. It's for the reference. They can take it with them.
Okay.
There you go. Okay. So one sort of final concept around this is a manufacturing concept. I've been very fortunate to work with a number of different manufacturing groups, and something that you can say to anybody in manufacturing and they will understand you is 1, 10, 100.
110, 100 means,
$1 fixed at the source or not
okay.
fixed at the source will cost you $10 to fix at the warehouse and $100 if it gets beyond the warehouse. And you can see the consequences are quite bad. If we look at it from a data perspective, there's a lot of data out there, but this 1, 10, 100 is very familiar to people in manufacturing. So we finish up here looking at what would be appropriate next steps. And my first concept would be to start inventorying business challenges and then affiliate with the people that are involved in them and identify specific projects, then connect and collaborate with these and find some way of promulgating and piloting your specific expertise in those areas. There's an awful lot that can be done, but what they're packaging here as FDE is excellent, but it's stuff that we should have been doing all along anyway. And if you follow these steps, I feel certain that you'll be on the successful side of an AI implementation as opposed to the unsuccessful side. If you're interested in more on this, I've found some more information for you that will be, again, in your information packet. And with that, I'll thank you for spending some time with me this morning.
Okay, thank you so much.